I am Brianne Wright.
And I am Taylor Weary.
We are undergraduate students majoring in psychology at the University of Louisiana at Lafayette and members of the Cognition and Psycholinguistics Research Lab directed by Dr. Brooke Brew. Death is widely recognized as a topic that is often referred to using an array of figurative expressions, such as when a doctor explains that they lost a patient, or when a friend tells us that someone they know is now on the other side. Significant relationships have been observed in previous research. For example, McLennan and colleagues found that participants who prefer negative metaphors, such as thinking of death as a cold, lonely journey, were more likely to have higher anxiety about death. They also observed that participants who prefer positive metaphors, such as thinking of death as a homecoming, were more likely to consider themselves religious. These preferences are interesting. However, there is little research that addresses whether factors such as these play a role in the production of death-related language. So we developed an experiment in which participants were asked to put themselves in an imaginary situation. They have a female friend who is volunteering overseas, and they need to write them an email. The participant either must convey that the friend's mother had died in a car accident that was her fault, or that the friend's mother had been caught cheating on her husband. Very generally, we are interested in the language that people will use to describe these two situations. More specifically, we are interested in how the language used in response to the death prompt would differ from the language used in the divorce prompt, as well as which factors are the best predictors of this language. For this preliminary analysis, we used a convenient sample of college students. A total of 89 students participated. Most were females around 20 years of age who were native English speakers and identified themselves as being a member of a particular religion. Our team started to collect data in person. Then the pandemic happened and we moved to online data collection. In our between subjects design, participants were randomly assigned to one of two prompts, one about the death of their friend's mother and the other about the death of their friend's father. Then they were asked to write an email to this friend explaining the situation. After writing their email, participants were asked to consider the degree to which the scenario they were given was similar to their personal experience and the likelihood they would be willing to perform an uncomfortable activity to support their friend. Finally, after each focusing on one of the factors we previously mentioned, participants saw a randomized sequence of questionnaires.
Our analyses focused on the specific words our participants used when writing their emails. First, we wanted to see what effects the different prompts had on the words produced by participants. Not surprisingly, 34% of participants receiving the death prompt produced at least one death-related word, as compared to only 4% of participants receiving the divorce prompt. If we look at the percentage of death-related words used by participants, we notice that the overall percentage was quite low, which is under 1% regardless of prompt. However, there was a significant difference such that participants receiving the death prompt produced a higher percentage of death-related words compared to participants receiving the divorce prompt. We also conducted an analysis across prompts that allowed us to determine which words appeared more frequently in emails written by those participants. Not surprisingly, participants given the death prompt were more likely to use words related to how the death occurred, accident, the death itself, past, and the emotions involved in the scenario, terrible. In addition to looking at the effect of the prompt, we also investigated the role that other factors play in predicting which words participants would produce. We looked at words related to death and anxiety to see if they could be predicted based on fear of death, but didn't find evidence of such an influence. We looked at words related to religion to see if they could be predicted based on the degree to which someone believes in an afterlife, whether or not they are affiliated with a particular religion, and their degree of spirituality. We found only spirituality to be a significant predictor of words related to religion. Based on these findings, we argue that spirituality is useful for predicting the type of language that people will produce when they are put into situations in which talking about death cannot be avoided. However, due to the wide range of responses to our prompts, further data collection and analysis is necessary to determine whether other factors also play a role. We plan to conduct follow-up analyses that will allow us to explore whether our factors of interest might predict the use specifically of literal death-related language. Our current analyses are preliminary and do not differentiate between literal and figurative language. Our plans for future research also involve collecting a larger sample of data from a more diverse population. We hope that this research can one day contribute to the development of an assessment that could be used to predict the way a person conceptualizes mortality. Thank you for listening.